An ex-Virginia sergeant and Capitol rioter by the name of Thomas Robertson was found guilty on all 6 charges he faced for his actions on January 6th. And I don't know if Tim Pool is paying any attention to this story. I wanna make sure he is. So make sure you draw his attention to this because he seems to be severely misinformed when it comes to the January 6th riots. We'll get to the details on that in just a moment. But first, here's the context. Robertson faced charges including impeding law enforcement officers, obstructing an official proceeding, entering and remaining in restricted grounds. That's the part I want Tim Pool to focus on, by the way, and tampering with evidence. The jury heard from multiple witnesses during the trial last week, including Washington police officers who were there during the attack, federal agents, and Robertson's former police colleague and co-defendant who testified as part of a plea deal with the government. So Robertson has been awaiting his trial in jail since July, and that's after investigators said that they found a rifle and also bomb-making material in his home. They also learned that he bought another 37 guns on the internet after his original arrest in January of 2021. According to Tim Pool's logic, he shouldn't have even faced any of these charges because you guys, there were no signs in the Capitol saying that you cannot trespass. Again, we'll get to that in just a minute, but I want that to like marinate in your mind as I give you more details to this story. During the trial, a DC Metropolitan Police officer testified that a man carrying a stick, who prosecutors say was Robertson, hit him and another officer as they tried to pass through the mob of rioters during the attack. Prosecutors played several clips of the incident, including footage from police body cameras worn that day. Prosecutors also cited online posts Robertson allegedly wrote a month before the attack, where he called for an open armed rebellion. The defendant made good on that promise. Assistant U.S. Attorney Elizabeth Alloy told the jury during opening arguments, saying that Robertson used a large stick to impede officers who were called in as backup during the riot. And then finally, some more details on this. Robertson's former Rocky Mount police colleague, Jacob Fracker, testified that Robertson joined him inside the Capitol, took a photo with him, and joined in chanting and cheering with the crowd inside. Fracker also testified that he had given Robertson his cell phone after the pair were told to turn themselves in, and that Robertson had put the phone in a container for ammunition and told him something to the effect of, "Problem solved." And let's keep it real. His defense was pretty weak, maybe because there was so much evidence against him. And in closing arguments, Robertson's attorneys argued that he had no plans to go down and say, "I'm going to stop Congress from doing this vote," and continued to suggest that the stick Robertson had with him was simply a walking stick. That's all it was, guys. It was a walking stick. It's just sometimes he slips and hits others with the walking stick, but it's a walking stick. That was his defense. Pathetic. Now, notably, he had his case heard before a jury. And I think that made all the difference because Tim Pool had made one of the stupidest arguments in order to provide cover for the Capitol rioters. If you don't remember what that stupid argument was, let me remind you.
A lot of people keep saying trespassing, and I think it's because we're like, they entered this property, but the Capitol is public property. My understanding is that many of these buildings, I'm not sure about the Capitol specifically, are open to the public in most cases. And for a lot of these people, you can watch video of the police opening up the door and saying, "I agree with your right to protest." So these people who walked in and were looking around and like smiling and waving, they were not informed, they weren't allowed to be there. There were no signs, there's no warning. The first thing that has to happen is, "Excuse me, you are trespassing during an official proceeding, you need to leave." "Oh, sorry about that, bye-bye," but they didn't do that. So I'm wondering if this is even trespassing.
Tim Pool's wondering if it's even trespassing because there were no signs saying that you may not trespass, right? Apparently he missed all of those videos that were littered across the internet showing how cops who had barricaded the building, who tried to block off the building, were overpowered by violent rioters who had attacked them physically in order to get through. Apparently, the entire country was able to see those videos except Tim Pool. Who knows? Maybe the beanie was on too tight. Maybe it was covering his vision, covering his hearing. I don't know. But to watch those videos and make an argument that like, well, the rioters didn't know that they weren't allowed to, storm through police barricades, storm into the building. Some, by the way, defecating on the floor. Like they didn't know. They didn't know that that was wrong. They shouldn't have done that. Now, recently, Tim Pool made the mistake of thinking that he could come after me and Cenk, tweeting this, how it started versus how it's going. Hey, Anna Kasperi and Cenk Uygur, I was right. Imagine getting dunked on as aggressively as Tim Pool was dunked on for that stupid argument. And then turning around to argue, I was right. Were you though, Tim? So as evidence for why he was right, he included a screenshot of this Daily Mail article. The winning Capitol riot defense, blame the cops. Government defense contractor becomes first defendant acquitted of all charges after arguing that officers opened door to Rotunda and let him in. And so the story is about one of the Capitol rioters, Matthew Martin is his name. And his case was a little different from the case that I shared details about earlier, because number one, he happens to be a federal defense contractor. And I'm speculating here, but I would argue that someone who has ties to the federal government as a federal defense contractor maybe gets treated a little differently. And to be sure, his case was treated differently because it was not heard before a jury. Matthew Martin was acquitted by US District Judge Trevor McFadden after a two-day bench trial. Martin, who chose to go to trial in the misdemeanor case before a judge rather than go before a Washington jury. Martin is the first January 6th defendant to be fully acquitted at trial. So let's repeat that last part again. Let's put that graphic up. Let's repeat that last sentence one more time for Tim Pool, who's a moron. Martin is the first January 6th defendant to be fully acquitted at trial. He did not have his case heard before a jury. A Trump-appointed judge was the only individual who made a decision about the future of this Capitol rioter, who again happens to be a federal defense contractor. Martin testified at his bench trial that he didn't see everything that was happening around him during the attack. Apparently he's blind as well. Even though the video he recorded, which was played by the government, shows broken windows and an alarm blaring when he enters the Capitol on the east side after rioters bust open the doors leading to the rotunda. McFadden said, by the way, that the first charge of entering and remaining in a restricted building was a close call. The judge is saying this. He's like, oh, this is a close call. I should probably not acquit you, but I'm gonna do it anyway as a Trump-appointed judge. But that there was reasonable doubt whether Martin knew he was entering a restricted building. Again, you hear the alarms in the video evidence. You can see the chaos around him, but it doesn't matter. He apparently didn't know that he's not supposed to enter that building. Again, shows broken windows and an alarm blaring as he enters the Capitol on the east side after rioters bust open the doors leading to the rotunda. And by the way, another important statistic for Tim Pool, who apparently likes to point to this one specific case to bolster the dumbest argument ever made. The FBI has more than 775 arrests in connection with the January 6th attack. More than 2,500 people are believed to have entered the Capitol that day, and hundreds of others assaulted officers outside the building. So if you're going to point to the one case that seems to be skewed in the favor of this Capitol rioter because of how the case played out, maybe just spare a moment to mention the literal hundreds of other arrests. And more importantly, the several cases that we've already talked about on this show where the perpetrators were found guilty. There's been a lot of that as well. But Tim Pool, curiously seems to have some sort of interest in providing cover for what happened in the Capitol that day, all while pretending to be someone who identifies as a liberal. Is anyone really buying that? Anyway, listen, Tim, you're way out of your league. You want to play with the big dogs? You better start reading. Loosen up that beanie, start thinking a little bit.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.